Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome aboard the T-64B 1984 here in War Thunder. And again, I make here in the beginning a bit of a compilation of two scenes that were kind of intense, and then at the end a battle that has a very amusing ending and a very amusing story, at least when I think about it. It was not so fun when I played it, but back to the tank. This is together with the M1 Abrams, the Leopard 2K, and also the Challenger 1, and for all intents and purposes the AMX-30B2 Brenners, the new tank in War Thunder, this time for the Russians, and it has a battle rating of, lo and behold, 9.3. So it's the top-end predator for the Soviets, right? Doesn't feel like that initially, and again this tank is fully upgraded. Again, it got gifted to me by Gaijin, so thanks to you. And let's see what we can talk about the tank. So at first when I began to play the tanks, it was really a bit strange that I didn't see the flood of T-64Bs that everybody expected, including me to a certain degree. And I noticed that a lot of T-64As were driving around, and they just served, for all intents and purposes, up until this point, as gun food for, well, the M1 Abrams, the Challenger, the Leopard 2K in particular. And so I was a bit surprised how well it turned out fighting against the Soviets initially. Well, nice shot here into the gun breech of the Abrams. He cannot escape, and this is the end of him. So, back to the tank. And so I figured out, well, compared to the amount of even Challengers and especially Leopard 2Ks and M1 Abrams, which were driving around like furious, the Soviets really seem to really grind with their T-64As in a free-to-play way for those tanks compared to, I guess, the M1 Abrams. And, well, the M1 Abrams also seems to be a better tank. It's faster, a higher rate of fire, and, yeah, better frontal protection for all intents and purposes. So where to begin to talk about the tank? Well, first of all, the protection. The problem is, no, let's begin with the mobility. We have just under 18 horsepower per ton ratio. That is not glorious. In fact, the tank reminds me overall a little bit about the Challenger. Yeah, that's true. And so I very often got just killed from the side. I very often got killed through the lower plate and the upper plate. Not so much through the turret, but the gun breech. It seems like every hit that hit me just knocked out my gun breech, the long repair times, and then I was rushed and killed. I tried to flank here the MBT-70. I didn't think that he saw me, but he did, and so I died here. Up to the next scene, and well, so the mobility is actually not that nice. In the long run, you're not slow, and you are not a slow tank, but in comparison to everything else on the battlefields of War Thunder, you just don't really cut it anymore. And then we have not talked about the lack of neutral steering. We have not talked about the just -4 km/h reverse gear. And so you can see how bad you are in terms of maneuverability compared to other tanks. Beautiful ricochet here of the upper frontal plate of the Leopard into his gun breech. And I have him. I wiggled with the turret so that he doesn't knock out my gun breech, or my gun barrel rather, with the 20mm cannon. And yes, that has happened to me before as well. So, and then there is the armor and the mobility. So you feel like a heavy tank where the armor doesn't really cut it anymore. It feels a bit like Tiger 2. It has its weak spots, they get exploited, and it's made even worse by the lack of mobility. I have no idea where that shell went. And then there is the gun. And the gun is a bit of a mixed bag. First of all, the 125mm 2A46 M1 cannon just offers you 36 rounds of ammunition, and you have a good selection of shells. you have the 3B-M15, which is the stock AP-FSDS round with 440 millimeters of penetration, which on paper, I have to point that out, is equal to the tier 4 upgrade on the Challenger, but it seems to have less normalization. It was pointed out in the comments, I tested it a little bit, and it's true, but it's still very, very good. And a muzzle velocity of nearly 1800 meters per second. Then, as a tier 1 upgrade, we have the 3BK12M heat defense with 440 millimeters of penetration. Nothing too special, I guess. Also, as a stock shell, we have the 30F19 high explosive shell, 35 millimeters of penetration. Nothing too special. Good enough for trolling, I guess, but that's about it. Then we also have, as a tier 3 upgrade, the 9M112 ATGM. Yes, this tank fires ATGMs. And what an ATGM is, it is 650 millimeters of penetration at any distance up to 5 kilometers away, and with 400 meters per second muzzle velocity, it's one of the fastest, if not the fastest ATGM in game. So that's quite something. But I never used it for the reason that I never got to use it. You just don't fight at those long distances where an ATGM is actually a viable thing because of the high muzzle velocity and the high penetration against flat armor of the AP FSDS. It's good enough. And as a tier 4 upgrade, the 3BM22 with 475 millimeters of penetration, and this is the shell that I actually didn't use in the beginning, and I just used the stock shell in the beginning, and just to make sure that I penetrate all the shots, I now use the upgraded shot. And the reason for that is, it's not the problem dealing with the enemies by shooting at them, in my opinion. It's more of the fact that to shoot first and to also bring the gun on to the enemy is the problem, because of the lack of mobility and just because of having 6 degrees of gun depression, which is not bad for Soviet standard. But for this tank, yeah, you want to go hull down, although it's not the best thing there. But yeah, so the tank suffers a little bit, especially how I got just ruffle stomped by M1 Abrams and also by Leopard 2Ks is just nuts. Like, it's insane how mobile they are and what they do to you. Yeah, triple strike here against the 3 MBT-70s, another Abrams that just doesn't see me, and I hit the lower glacis, and I should have gone for the you know, deflection or shot trap shot, which I do now eventually by killing the tank. So quadruple strike, multi-strike times 4, yeah. And this was the one battle that I played that was actually pretty good. In the beginning I just was killed, and you cannot play that passively in the current meta. And another M60 feeded himself to me, and I drive like a boss into a Panther wreck. So let's move on, let's capture the point, and I want to move on. Yeah, in this battle I noticed there was an M1 Abrams that I actually saw that he was shooting, and now that I don't see him on the road, I suspect that he's coming around this way, so I want to angle myself. And yes, the side armor, despite being 85mm thick, it's insane how good people are aiming at the tracks and do penetrate there. I tricked the Abrams shooting into the side armor again, I disabled his gun breach, and now he's just food. He's just food. And yeah, I actually didn't want to shoot there, but I had to disable him, and he can't do anything. He's a safe kill. Thank you very much. 7th kill. So at this point in time, I was really on fire. In this battle, the tank was good, but how many of those kills could I have gotten in another tank, like a Leopard or an M1 Abrams? I guess all of them. So the tank has a very problematic state. It's not fast enough, and there we can see the actual problem. My internet kicks in the best battle that I played the entire day. Yeah, that was my professional comment on it. So yeah, the gun breach gets taken out very often, so the best thing is to not get hit. I tried to reverse, but my internet slams me always against the the train here, the train wreck, which is kind of a shame because there is potentially another kill, but the messages from the server from Gaijin still go somewhat through, so that I actually can capture the point, that I can mark here the enemy and so forth, that I can get shot. It's still there, but I just can't reverse, and this M50 Ontos just likes to harvest me right now. Sets me on fire once and then twice, and now I extinguish the fire, and I desperately try to reverse because it's just a very small window where he can shoot me. I tried to reload an ATGM to sling it over this rack, but there is nothing working for me anymore, despite the ping being normalized. I'm kind of trapped here in some kind of connection issue, okay? But I still can press the buttons, for example, through replenishment and so forth, as you will see in a moment. So the T-64B, I do not see that many of them on the battlefield because they simply don't fit the meta anymore. Now, because that sentence alone triggers a lot of people, it's just simply, it's not mobile enough. It doesn't have enough mobile support. And while the Shilka is good as a radar SPA, it's not really the good flanking support that you wish to have in a normal, medium tank. The Leopard is its own support, much like the M1 Abrams, and the Challenger has kind of the same place in the meta like the T-64B at the moment. But the T-64B's cannon feels strong, it is strong, and despite having an autoloader, we have 7.1 seconds, which is the same as an expert crew for a Challenger, which can go down to 6.7s, but that is still 42% longer, the reload on the T-64B, than both the Leopard and also the, well, Abrams. So the tank is nice, but it's not really, it doesn't seem to be the flavor of the month. You have to pay, you have to aim much more careful on the enemy than they have to aim at you. And so I kind of want to like the tank, but I do not really enjoy it. And just in the last hour or so, when more players got online, I wasn't fighting the hardcore ultra pros anymore, and I got some kills. And yes, it really feels like that when you just have to fight against a population of 35,000 players globally. It really is feelable. It really hits home hard. So that's it for me today. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Please give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this whole topic, and we'll see each other on the battlefields of War Thunder.